Hi, I'm Professor Green, and today we're going to be doing Chapter 6, Communication. This is part 1 of Chapter 6. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So, I like Chapter 6 because it talks about communication, and I think that's always super important. Obviously, I have a second master's. My first master's is from Thunderbird in business, but my second master's is in communication because I just saw throughout my career how important it was that people communicate properly. And so this first section, I think, is more common sense. I feel like the second and the third section of this chapter actually is more relevant to this course at LMU. But let's go through it nonetheless. So the whole chapter, we're going to apply tools and techniques to be more persuasive communicators and leaders. We're going to explain how to successfully engage in difficult conversations with others. I think exactly that's going to be helpful because I feel like yeah, I think here in California, kind of a culture thing. I've been engaged. I've seen that it's not as easy to engage in difficult conversations. Also, we want to describe effective feedback and listening skills because, as we heard about from our guest speaker, negotiations, really important to have good listening skills. So here's a demonstration of two Asian leaders at the United Nations communicating and laughing. So the objectives for the first part, which we'll do just in this video, are to apply tools and techniques to be more persuasive communicators and leaders. And why I feel like this is maybe less important, because I feel like you might get this in other courses, it still is very important, right? As we go out into the workplace, we're continuously convincing people to do things that we'd like to undertake certain initiatives. You might not be in sales, you might not be in business development, you might not be CEO, but you're still persuading people on a regular basis. So you want to learn how to detail the persuasive utility of framing for influence, right? So how you set up the situation. We're going to list 7 tactics using charismatic communication. All I can think of is Tony Robbins when I think of this. He has mastered this, right? Because I think that what he's saying is actually nothing really totally new, but the way he says it is just so engaging. We're also going to describe the power of effective storytelling because stories are so impactful. And how can we make those stories even more impactful? So the next slide here is denotation versus connotation on the next slide. So denotation is the translation of a word to its literal meaning, more or less how dictionaries define it. So if you want to say someone who has low body fat, we can describe them as lean, slender, skinny, scrawny, all slightly different, right? But words really matter because as we see here on the next slide, right, connotation is how they're commonly understood in the culture. And so I think of this, when people who don't speak English as their native tongue, sometimes they'll use the wrong word, right? They'll use something with a negative connotation when they don't realize it. They might say, oh, you look scrawny today. And what they really mean is that you look thin, but actually in English, scrawny is not very positive. So words matter. And so, what is framing? So, framing is all about how you pitch the situation. And I'm sure if you experience being a teenager, most likely you have walked through this. You have said, let's do it this way or let's do it that way. And here in the book, they go through 2 different situations. So a situation where you talk about the positive side, and then a situation where you talk about the negative side. I won't take you through the example, but the whole idea is that it's the same situation, and actually one has a little more risk than the other, but the way you frame it, it sounds like the one with more risk has less. So, the framing effect occurs when the choice between 2 alternatives reverses depending on whether the scenario focuses on the potential gain or the potential loss associated with each alternative. And the short and simple example that they give in the book, which I think is super interesting, is, when you go to the store to buy yogurt, you see yogurt that says 80% fat free, right? You're like, wow, it's almost fat free. But you don't see yogurt that says, oh, 20% fat sometimes, right? And so at least when there was a phase when we were all looking at fat-free options, maybe 15, 20 years ago. And so now, now yogurts have, moved in different directions, but when if people are looking at fat content, they're more concerned about the free of fatness as opposed to how much fat it has. So how can we communicate with charisma? Right. So there's studies have been shown that some people, right, are born with this, but many of us can develop this. And so we exude confidence, optimism, wit, and charm. And so they talk about a lot of examples in the book, right? Martin Luther King, JFK, Bill Clinton, Obama, etc., that we've spoken about in class. And so they've really been able to master this so that people listen to them. I've had some great managers who are so charismatic, and you just really enjoy working with them. And so metaphors is a big piece of that. How can you include metaphors in the way you talk? So they are figures of speech to apply to an object or a concept or an action. So to visualize an idea. So here, Martin Luther King's speech, we've come into our nation's capital to cash a check, right? Because he was talking about some, big picture ideas about freedom for the Blacks. And, and he was saying, how is he thinking, like, how is he going to illustrate that? And so he's in Washington, the place where they print a lot of money. They talk a lot about money. So, he says, we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So again, he's making these things as metaphors. And people were then more easily able to identify what his idea was. Then we have rhetorical questions. I'm a big fan of these because I think they can be easy to think of. So questions that are not meant to get an immediate answer. And, question that they mentioned in the book is, when will we be satisfied? Right. So nobody's really expecting to say what the answer is, but it's something for you to think about. It helps you make a particular point, elicit an emotional response, and start a discussion. Contrast and comparisons. A lot of these ideas I spoke about when I taught public speaking years ago. And so that's why I think that maybe you've had these ideas in previous courses, but good to remind ourselves, right? So mindful of the ideal state, but also how that future state compares to alternatives. So I like that idea of, many times now, when we go to buy something, we have like 3 different packages to choose from. If you go to, we all get Zoom here for free at LMU, or included in our tuition. But if you were to buy a Zoom package, they give you like a monthly, a yearly, all these different options. And so that allows you to compare and contrast. Effective speakers regularly introduce new ideas for the future. So in describing them in relation to the present and comparing them to other ideas, allow listeners to visualize an idea in context. And sometimes the speaker will make comparisons that exaggerate the alternatives of a particular option. And I do that sometimes too, just to kind of bring it back to where we are today. Repetition and lists, use of lists, you'll see that very often on mainstream media, yahoo.com, etc. These are the 5 tips to lose weight today, the 10 ideas to detox your body, etc. So those are just become so popular. They've seen them become so successful. And here's a more serious example. Again, Martin Luther King, he used repetition. And all the years that I taught public speaking, I didn't see students use this as much, and I thought, what a bummer, because it's so simple and it's so effective. Saying, I have a dream that I have a dream that I have a dream that one day, etc. I have a dream. So yeah, simple but effective. Moral conviction. So yeah, one's commitment to one's moral beliefs, the higher order. So, God would like us to do this. The universe would like us to do this. The community would like us to do this. Right now, my PTA of my son's school is doing a drive to get people to donate and sign up for the PTA. And they're saying, we're doing it for the kids. Your kids will value this. We have your kids' best intention at heart. And so this is moral conviction, higher purpose, and emphasize their own core beliefs, including things like integrity, justice, and goodwill. And invoking the collective. So this is all about emphasizing the collective, encourages people to take action by showing that others are already acting, reducing the risk of taking part. I have a little visitor here today. This is Rodney. He just woke up because it's only 6:30 a.m. in California. Say good morning, Rodney. Good. Great. So we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood, right? That's the collective. We will work together to pray together. And in this little passage, right, King invokes the concept of brotherhood among all those that are listening. Rodney came in at the perfect time, right? So ambitious goals. I think that this slide is a little bit lopsided. The title is wrong, but I didn't want to change it in case you printed out the slides and you didn't know where to find this slide. In any case, I think ambitious goals was supposed to be on the previous slide, but these are the 7 communication tactics, right? To summarize: metaphors, rhetorical questions, contrasts and comparisons, repetition, the collective, moral conviction, and ambitious goals. Also, this title is incorrect, ambitious goals. But we're going to talk about here on this slide 7 communication tactics that are helpful. Why they're helpful is because, again, as I said, maybe you're not in sales, maybe you're not in business development, maybe you're not CEO, but you are writing a memo to your supervisor.
Who are you talking to? There's no one even.
There's no one there. I'm recording a video. Developing a proposal, interviewing, right, convincing someone to hire you, etc. Encouraging work teammates. This is one of the most common. Right. And even convincing friends to go on an adventurous vacation with you, convincing your child to do something for you. So why are stories so persuasive? A premise and character development. Yeah. So first you have a premise, a setting, a starting point for the setting, for the story, a location, a context, historical context, etc. Then you have character development. And those of you who have studied film before, this is more up your alley. One main character, usually several supporting characters, and they all have preferences and experiences. Foreshadowing, you want to get a hint of what is going to happen later in the story. A little tension, every story must have a central conflict or challenge. If you think about popular movies, the new Barbie movie, definitely. I see her, haven't seen it yet, but I see her running through offices and things. So there's some sort of conflict that she's trying to avoid. And then a resolution, right? And then if not, then the audience is left unsatisfied. I find that sometimes Woody Allen movies don't satisfy me because he doesn't necessarily always resolve the conflict. And people love them, but sometimes they don't resonate with me as much. So this is where I'm extremely passionate, the nonverbal, right? Facial expressions, body position, eye contact, other physical gestures. So why I'm so adamant about when we have Zoom classes, everyone turns on their video, right? As our negotiation speaker said, doing a Zoom call with people who have their video off is kind of like landing an airplane in the fog and your controls go out, right? You're not able to read what the audience is thinking and saying. And so our last slide here for today is about furniture placement and the messages. I thought that was interesting too, bringing in some interior design. So yes.
Nice.
Yeah, you want to see, Rodney? So this is a situation where someone is sitting at a desk and then the person is talking to them across the way, um, in a single chair. And this says the message that I'm the boss. But if they move the desk and then they have a chair here and and then someone else sits across from them without a desk in between, it says, I'm the boss here, but let's talk. And then the last one is like the dean has a setup here. She has a desk, but she also has a table in her room, in her office, with a couch where people can sit there. And she also has a table where people can sit around a table. So it says, forget the boss, forget I'm the boss. Um, let's talk. And so again, this is nonverbal communication where you can place furniture and still send a message. So thank you so much for joining us for part 1 of chapter 6, and I look forward to seeing you in part 2.